Hello everyone, my name is Srikanth. I am the host of the show Inspire Someone Today. This podcast brings in personalities from a cross-section of our society who will share their perspectives, learnings, hacks and experiences that can inspire all of us in our journeys. Come, join me on this ride. Welcome back to the last episode of 2023. Stitching together 12 best advice across all the episodes of 2023 in no specific order. Here it is. So, what are the skills that's relevant in the new age? We had the privilege of having MSR, the CEO of T-Hub, on episode 75, where he alluded the current age skills are the 4 C's, which is critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. Listen in as MSR alludes to how these skills are relevant in the current state.
But I'll tell you where I think, as opposed to just learning a specific set of skills, I think if individuals focus on essentially the 4 C's, if you will, right, which is about, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication, right? These are 4 skills. So I think I'll put it this way, right? I think technology will shift every 5 years and the pace of change of technology is rapid. So what will stand you in good stead is these 4 things, which is being able to think your way through a problem critically, one, right? Being able to question why, and not accepting anything, at face value, but really getting deeper and understanding. Second is creativity, because, for example, we've all heard about this thing called the creator economy, which didn't exist a few years ago. Collaboration, being able to work with other people as part of teams. And more than ever, it's not just good being technically, but also being able to communicate.
I thoroughly enjoyed and took away so many learnings from our conversation with Ravi Venkateshan. Ravi shared the impact of Pygmalion effect, and to my question on how does one encounter self-doubt, he had this to say.
You always have anxieties, fears of failure, self-doubt, all these things. But one of my favorite quotes is that courage is not the absence of fear or self-doubt. It is the ability to operate despite it. So, it's human to have anxieties and self-doubt and fear. But, you put it away and keep going. And usually things work out.
Close on the heels of Ravi's episode was episode 83. This was Randall Reeves, one of the very few individuals on this planet to have taken Figure 8 voyage. And in our conversation, Randall touched upon the ability of how he went about overcoming fears. He so vividly put it across. Courage is ability to operate despite having the fears. It's about preparedness, anticipation, and facing fear with confidence.
It's difficult to answer that question because I think people who haven't sailed look at the fear differently than people who have. Mm-hmm. So it's not as though I had done the Figure 8 voyage, but I had some sailing experience versus most people I talk to have none. You think of it, you're looking at it with like the eyes wide open, whereas when I finally left on the Figure 8 in 2017, I had about 30,000 miles of ocean sailing, and I'd spent at least 3 years preparing. So the fear is different, right? Part of what I had come to was I had solved the puzzle. I knew it was possible. I didn't know if my boat could do it. I didn't know if I could do it, but I knew it was possible. I'd laid it down such that it was logical. The route was logical. The timings were logical. I knew it could be done. I just wasn't sure that I could do it. So the fear was more about, can I keep myself on point and can I handle the weather, the daily challenges? And the challenges are not small, right? I remember talking to a friend of mine about this and relating to him some of the fears that I had. It's like, well, what if I'm hit by a ship in the middle of the night? And what if when I'm hit by that ship, that puts a hole in the boat? And what if there's so much water coming to the boat that I sink and I drown? And he said, whoa, wait a minute, back up. He says, assign a value to each of those 3 fears. Let's just pick something out of thin air. So let's say there's a 50% chance that you'll get hit by a ship. And there's a 50% chance that you'll put a hole in the boat. And there's a 50% chance that hole in the boat will be big enough to sink the boat. Well, those 50%, so 50% times 50% times 50% is what? It's like 13%, 12%. So in actual, the chance of your dying is not 50%. The chance of your dying is more like 10% from an event like that. Point being, I was really worried about cascading failure, about many things happening and feeding off each other that would kill me. But whereas in matter of fact, my friend was saying, look, you have a brain, things happen one at a time. You can figure things out. And the chances of them all combining together to kill you are actually very, very small. So the point of that story was think it through, right? Yeah. I hadn't really thought it through, and I was being irrational in my fear.
This conversation with Surbhi made me to think, how many times have I relied on insights coming from others than my own gut feeling? And just strengthen the case that lot many times we don't give enough credit, enough recognition to our own thoughts and gut feelings. And this conversation really changed that perspective to weigh in more to those gut feelings and see how the change can transform us.
In retrospection, I can start by saying that today I believe that there is a deep innate wisdom in each one of us. I'm not saying in few, but literally I'm saying each one of us. We need to learn how to tap into that wisdom. So when somebody gives an advice, and this is what I do today, and I will kind of briefly mention what I did before also, right? As in where I wasn't as wise. Earlier, especially when I did Elixir Fitness, right? I thought I have no idea about this health and wellness industry. I have no idea how to do a service retail business before. So I would ask 10 different people these questions. What should I do? How should I do it? And remember, I was going as an engineer into this business. I'm a founder, but I'm still an engineer in my head and sitting in small cubicle. So I thought I didn't know. And therefore I have to ask industry experts, people who have done this before. They can advise and I can follow that. And every time something went wrong and I kind of knew that this is not how it should be done. And my gut was telling me that I need to do it differently, not follow this advice. But because they know better, I thought, therefore I followed their advice. Not that they were wrong, but in my situation, which only I know fully, only I can choose and only I can decide. And remember, when you own a business, all success is credit to everybody. All failures are your own. And you have to accept it. And that's how it works and that's how it should be. So it is my decision if we fail. And fail meaning take time, take cost, whatever. Failure is not permanent here, right? I'm not in that sense. So slowly and surely from then onwards, I started trusting my own gut. So we can ask people and what resonates. If it resonates, that means it matches with our own innate wisdom. Then most of the time it works. Because you may not have conscious awareness of what's the right answer, but you will feel it all the time. You will always feel it. So I think there's no good and bad advice. What resonates with you most. And if you're connected with your own gut instinct, then you will always go right.
If the last 4 insights were about mind, this conversation on episode 101 took to a different trajectory with Tom Nash. He brought in a perspective of what's beyond resilience. And that's a phrase called anti-fragility. Yes, hear from Tom's own words of how it is even more important to be anti-fragile than just being focused on being resilient.
I kind of realized that I was acting in a bit of an anti-fragile way naturally after having gone through my disability. And I was reading a little bit about a field of study called post-traumatic growth, which is almost the opposite of post-traumatic stress, which more people are familiar with, I guess. But post-traumatic growth is when people go through a trauma or some sort of a large challenge, I guess, and grow stronger as a result out of it. Could be mentally, I guess. And the more I read about it, then I came across Anti-Fragile, the book and the idea by Nassim Taleb. And as I alluded to before, he talks about it in the sense of economies in a way, and a lot in industries. Like if you think about, he talks about airlines as an industry are anti-fragile because every time a plane crashes, it forces everyone to do a lot of audits and upgrade of planes, and so the industry as a whole actually gets safer after every crash, right? So the plane on its own is not anti-fragile, but the industry is anti-fragile.
Who would have imagined capturing stories, becoming a storyteller would be as easy as creating homework for life? It's a simple technique that I have started liking it is capturing. This is not journaling. This is more about capturing those moments, memories that happens through the day and have a log of it so that it comes in handy for storytelling, but more importantly, to jog back the memory lane to see, capture those wonderful moments that has happened through the course of the day, week, month, and year. So listening as Matt Dix on episode 99 shares this wonderful concept of homework for life.
So in an effort to find more stories to tell back early in my career when I was sort of running out of ideas, I decided I would sit down at the end of every day and I would ask myself, what's the most story-worthy moment from my day? And regardless of whether something really story-worthy happened or it was nothing, I'm going to pick something from that day and I'm going to write it down. Now, I don't believe in writing the whole story down because that's great effort. And people are just going to skip days if they're told that they have to write 500 words every day. So I just use Excel, the program. My 2 columns is a date and on the left, and then I stretch that B column across the screen. And in the B column, just at the length of a computer screen, that's where I write what happened over the course of the day that I think is going to be story worthy. And my goal was to sort of get 12 new stories per year, a new story per month that maybe I would have forgotten about had I not done Homework for Life. But what happened instead, and not just for me, for thousands of people all over the world, I discovered that my days are filled with stories, that every day contains moments that I don't want to release, moments I don't want to forget, that I used to forget all the time. It's terrible. Like one of the worst games I can play here, I'll play it with you in your audience right now. You take your age, whatever it is. I happen to be 52. So today we'll subtract 12. So if I do 52 minus 12, I get 40. Whatever your number is, do your math right now. And then think of that year of your life. For me, my 40th year of my life. Think about how many things you remember from that year of your life. You know, you went around the sun on a planet for 365 days. And quite often people can't remember a thing about 12 years ago. You know, I have people in workshops cry all the time because they said they realize they've lost a year of their life. They can't remember a single thing. Does that mean that nothing happened that year? No, of course not. It just means they didn't take account of it. So Homework for Life, whether you want to be a storyteller or you just want to be a human being who slows time down and notices things that you're not noticing right now, Homework for Life is that process for you to help you see your days better, hold on to your days better, slow time down, and start to see the meaning in your life that you're not seeing right now.
A lawyer turned CEO who is running a hospital. Episode 88, Ujjwala joined us to share her experience of running an hospital and more importantly, her approach towards making learning an ongoing process for herself and for her team. How do you learn from others and keep yourself relevant in a fast changing world and learning from different sources? So, listening to Ujjwala as she articulates the power of learning from others.
I constantly think that we have to keep reinventing ourselves and looking at what are the areas that we are not good at and seeing can we solve it differently. Second is creating a network of people that you can talk to. I have a strong network of mentors, other entrepreneurs, other leaders in healthcare. I'm always reaching out to, I don't particularly care about, this is where I don't have much of an ego in terms of what will they think if I ask for help. I don't bother about all of that. I ask because, my father always said, if you don't ask anyway, the answer was no. So, so if you ask and the answer is no, it's fine, but at least you tried, So I constantly reach out to people. My process when I have a doubt or when I'm unsure is to talk. I talk to my team, I discuss it with my team, and I openly tell them that I don't know. I'm conflicted. I'm unsure of what decision to take. And sometimes I think, decision making, being very quick in decision making is also good. But sometimes when you're unsure, take time. Defer decision making. It's okay. Things will come to you. Things will get clarified. Time does. Sometimes things are very time sensitive, but sometimes we put unnecessary pressure on ourselves to take a decision, take a quick decision. No, not necessary. I would say when I'm unsure about people, for example, I will wait to meet the right person instead of making a wrong hire, in a hurry. I have done that mistake in the past, and I don't think it's not a good mistake to make.
If longevity is on your mind, you should definitely head to episode 89 with Prashant Desai. What was supposed to be a two-part discussion, one on Prashant's entrepreneurial venture and two on his studies on longevity. It was a wonderful masterclass of understanding the science behind longevity and methods that Prashant is experimenting and implementing to forge longevity into his lifestyle. Listening to Prashant on episode 89.
If my belief systems are stronger, my behavior automatically changes. So what is Dr. Sinclair's philosophy? Just to give your listeners a precursor to that, Dr. David Sinclair is the Dean of Gerontology at Harvard. He's dedicated his entire life to studying a set of longevity genes called sirtuins. Okay. And I was telling you about 2005, 2010, when this whole geroscience space kind of got a big flip. Before that, all scientists who were in this field were, though they were working on aging, but they were killing each other, trying to say who is right, who is wrong. Till that time came when they all agreed on 9 hallmarks of aging. And they kind of cut this into a pizza slice, giving each of these equal weightage. Dr. David Sinclair, who was at that time studying sirtuins, which is part of one of the hallmarks called epigenetic reprogramming, to which I will come in a minute. When he did more work, he realized that behind all these 9 slices of pizza or 9 hallmarks of aging, there is one thing which is common. And that is the sirtuins and the role these sirtuins play. And he has since then written this book called Lifespan, explaining the process. So what does he say? He's saying that if you look at our human body, we are made up of trillions of cells. Okay. When we were in our mother womb, when the sperm and the egg met, one embryotic cell took birth and then it kept multiplying, dividing. 9 months, lo and behold, a baby is born. Okay. But if you go back, our human body is made up of trillions and trillions and trillions of cells. Each of these cells have our DNA. Okay. Our DNA is like your binary code. It's digital in nature and it consists of 4 letters, A, T, C, and G. Okay. We get 3.2 billion letters from our mom and 3.2 billion letters from our dad. Every cell in our body has 6.4 billion letters. Okay. If I put this 6.4 billion letters in a straight line, it will be 6 feet tall inside one cell. Okay. Entire body's DNA, if I put it in a straight line, it goes to the moon and comes back 8 times. That much DNA is in every human body. Okay. Now imagine one cell. We have trillions of cells. How is the cell storing this DNA? It can't store it in a straight line. So it very carefully pools this DNA. This pooling of DNA is storing the digital information very similar to the DVD players that we had, if you remember in olden days. Songs were there in the DVD system. So think of your DNA as the digital information on the CD. But it's binary. It's ATCG. The DVD on its own cannot play the song. DNA on its own is just a set of instruction. It cannot do. It needs a reader. So have you ever wondered, when all cells are same and every cell is the same genetic information, how does one cell go on to become eye? One cell go on to become skin? One cell goes on to become hair? One cell goes on to become nail? Identical information. That role, the reading of the DNA or the DVD, is played by something called as epigenome. Epigenome means above. Epi means above. It sits above the genome, and its role is when the DNA was spooled, that 6.4 billion letters, Mother Nature spooled it in a way that it kept some genes on and some genes off. Epigenome reads which genes are on and which genes are off. By reading which genes are on and which genes are off, it tells the cell, hey, you cell, go and become I. Not only will you become I, but you will also remain I for the next 100 years. Why? Because tomorrow, if it loses this instruction and instead of I, that cell becomes hair. Just imagine what will happen to your eye. There'll only be hair. Ever seen a lot of people as they old, they get a lot of hair in their ear? That is genetic instructions going wrong. The cell which was supposed to remain skin has become hair. and hence you are growing more hair where you are supposed to grow skin. So you have DVD, which is basically the DNA or the genetic information digital. Epigenome, which reads this information like a DVD player. If you look at a DVD player, when you bought a new DVD player, it was playing the songs beautifully. Then what happened? Slowly, the DVD started getting some scratches. Those scratches are the noise. So when there is a very small scratch, nothing happens. From the time we are born, we start damaging our DNA or the DVD. Every time you go and damage the DNA, somebody has to come and do the cleaning up process. But these scratches that we develop over a period of time is nothing but aging.
If you want to live long, you also want to be happy. That's exactly what we covered on episode 91 with Dr. Happy. Elevating happiness is something that you choose. And that's precisely what Dr. Happy introduced us to, the choose framework. Jump right in to listening to this framework that will definitely help you to boost and give you a dose of happiness every day. So choose happiness through choose framework.
So much of my work for almost 20 years now, it was about 20 years ago, I developed a philosophy, I suppose, of happiness, which was drawn from all the research into positive psychology and related fields. And in summary, that was about happiness is something you choose. And when I say choose, I mean that in two ways. One, by choosing, I mean, it's about taking responsibility and prioritizing happiness. There are a lot of people who say they want to be happier, but when you look at their day-to-day lives, they're really not prioritizing it. They're prioritizing other things. And so if you prioritize other things, they will determine your focus and your actions, etc. So the first part of happiness is something you choose is choosing a life where you really want to value happiness, taking responsibility that this is something I'm going to seek. I'm not going to just wait for someone else to give it to me. But choose is also an acronym that stands for 6 key strategies. Again, based on the positive psychology research, which if you like, I'll quickly run through them now. So choose obviously starts with C. And C stands for, it stands for clarity. And what I mean by that is clarity of values, clarity of priorities. I already touched on the idea that, if we want more happiness, we need to prioritize it. But if we want a better life, a good life, we also need to lead a life that's guided by values. And this is a really, really important part of positive psychology. And if you don't even know what those values are, you can't be guided by them. So the first thing is, we need to be clear about what's really important to me. Now, again, there's no right or wrong answers, and your answers may well be different to mine, and that's okay. There are different people with different lives, etc. But each and every one of us, if we really want to live a good and meaningful life, we need to be clear. This is the C in clarity, clear of what's really important to me. Is it about generosity, kindness, compassion, or is it about competition? And there's different ways we can live our lives. Some ways are more likely to lead to more happiness and thriving and flourishing and health and well-being. Other ways maybe less so. So that's the first thing I really encourage people to do, is to sit back and ask, what's really important to you? Is it empathy and tolerance, or is it something else? Is it love and kindness, or is it something else? And then once we're really clear on that, they should guide pretty much every decision we make every single day. And that makes living a good life that much easier. Without that clarity, it's very hard. It's like, it's like trying to hit a target that you can't even see. So that's the C it's about clarity of values, priorities, etc. The H in choose stands for healthy living. Now, too often people talk about psychological health and physical health as separate things, but they're really not separate, intimately and integrally interlinked. So we know that our psychological well-being can affect our physical health and well-being, and vice versa. So if we want to enjoy more happiness, we need to look after our physical health and well-being.
Life is Too Short guy, the author of this book, Scott White, was on episode 85. And according to a long-standing research, what makes a great life? It's power of relationship. Yes, you heard it right. The power of relationship is what makes a great life. Do listening as Scott shares this empirical research study that emphasizes on the relationship between happiness, longevity, and having a great life. It's that relationship.
The longest running longitudinal study, it's one of the few studies I talk about in the book, on what makes a good life. The study started at Harvard University in the late 1930s, and it's still running today. 85 years later, they had an original cohort of 256 Harvard sophomores, I believe it was. And then a few years later, they added a second cohort of about 450 some odd inner city youth, people that weren't at Harvard, people that had different backgrounds. So in total, they had over 700 participants in the study that the Harvard researchers have followed for the last 80 plus years. And obviously not all of the participants are still alive, but they're following their children, their grandchildren, in-depth questionnaires, physical exams, mental health assessments. Anyway, it is a trove of massive data on what makes a good life. And the key takeaway, like you could summarize 85 years and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, I don't know, of pages of data into one or two sentences. And the most important thing to live a happy life, to what makes a good life, is the power of relationships.
Famous Chinese proverb says, a best time to grow a plant is 20 years ago, and the next best time is now. That was exactly what Ram Kumar Narayanan alluded on episode 102 of Creating a Portfolio Life, which is on the premise of building networks, having opportunities to expand one's horizon, developing perspectives, and it's an ongoing effort. It's not something that happens when things knock at our door and we have to fall, rise up, and then start scouting for a portfolio, career, or life. It's about preparing for those moments in life and career. And that's exactly what Ram highlighted in this episode of Portfolio Careers.
In some ways, I wish I had learned it. But if I look back on my life, right, I've always had a portfolio in some sense. I didn't call it that. I didn't even know it was called that until I met one of my mentors who framed it so nicely and wrote a book around it. But I think the innate curiosity, kicking the tires all the time. So even whether I was a college or student or I was in the workforce, I've always kept side projects, right? Whether it is more formal or informal, I've always had things going on, multiple things going on in my life. I mean, there was obviously a primary one which paid my bills and gave me a salary and all that kind of stuff. But I've always been a fan of trying out multiple things, all the time. Just keep something boiling, right? Some areas of interest boiling for me personally. So I have side projects and I have things that I do. That has helped me be able to weather changes that have come up also. Not everything that happens in your personal or professional life is always up and to the right? I mean, there's always challenges that come up. But I think what has helped me mitigate that is that, right? Having those other avenues, having, relationships with people, networks that I can tap into, talk to, right? Not build those networks when I needed them, but when I didn't need them, so that I can tap into them when I needed to get answers or have somebody go talk to when things change, right? So I think that's a very important thing that everybody needs. So I wish I had learned this earlier in my life in some ways, right? How do you build these networks and things? But nevertheless, I think it's an important piece, and that allows you to then start to examine options in front of you, when things change, right? And so I don't know if I want to call it a portfolio life, but keeping those different avenues active is important. And even today, even at this stage, I do my day job and I have that, but I also do a lot of other things in the ecosystem. I get involved with it, which gives me a set of perspectives which I don't get by just working for one company, because it opens me up to a diverse set of people and thoughts and ideas.
Episode 86 takes us to a discussion with Suhas Vedam, the broadcaster, wonderful, wonderful storyteller. And how do you bring all of these lessons together? These 12 lessons. And the answer to that lies in this beautiful message that Suhas shared, which is all about trusting the process and believing in ourselves. Again, going back to the episode with Ravi Venkateshan was about self-doubt, and wrapping up is having that belief and trust in oneself. I hope you enjoyed these 12 lessons that I captured during the course of this year. Do feel free to log in to any of these episodes, listen in more, and feel free to share it amongst your network. And I would love to hear from you what you felt about all of these episodes, all of these wonderful guests who were on the show. and their presence, their inputs, their insights had a tremendous bearing on me, and I hope it had on you as well. Keep listening, and until next time, keep inspiring.
All the listeners, listen, start somewhere. It's not going to be the greatest of opportunities, but start somewhere. And the beauty of what we do, if you want to be in front of the camera or behind the microphone, is that we don't know who's listening. So just because you did not see the door doesn't mean you haven't even knocked the door. You've actually knocked the door and you don't know it yet. You will know it when somebody slides into your DMs or somebody texts you on LinkedIn saying, you know what, I saw you in that one small match in Santa Clara. This is what I felt after that. Thank you so much. That'll give you just enough motivation to go into the next phase or the next stint, etc. So you will have moments like that. Just believe in yourself and keep going. Trust the process.
That's a wrap for this year, folks. Thank you so much for your support, for your love, for your affection. Without all of this, Inspire Someone Today couldn't have been in the top 25% of all podcasts this year. With presence in 71 plus countries, this has been an absolute pleasure, joy, and loads of learning in creating these ripples of inspiration. So before we sign off, wishing you and your family and your near and dear ones a fantastic 2024, and come back for a lot more inspirers joining us, and we continue to create these ripples of inspiration in 2024. Until then, keep listening, keep inspiring, and take care of yourself. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what to listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.